Good day, everyone. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Today, we are talking to my good buddy Erik Ong about all the player movement going on during draft week. So I'm just going to throw him up on the screen right now. Erik, I made a new way of displaying faces here on StreamYard for my good buddy Alex Rickleen because he said, I'm not zoomed in enough. How do I zoom in? And so I tried it myself. So let's see what that looks like here. I don't know if I like that more or less. It's kind of too much of us, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. Whichever gets the most interest, I believe it would be
Yeah.
great.
We're going to get thumbs up for
Um,
this, or are we going to get
yeah,
thumbs down for this?
etc. Yeah, no,
Yeah, we don't know. So how's it going, buddy? Thanks for waking up ridiculously early.
no, it's all right. When you're my age, sleeping early tends to lead to waking up early, etc., etc. And I don't know. Every time you say, "Hey, Eric, let's do a show," I it's like Christmas morning, and I just wake up way too early because I'm just too damn excited to get on these shows with you, buddy. It's so I know it's like in the dead of the off season, but I can't help but think about 25, 26 fantasy basketball
Man,
already.
it's going to be you and I were talking before I hit record, and then we're diving into some of these trades here just about how exciting the upcoming draft season is going to be for so many reasons, but like tippy top of the list is the fact that you, me, Adam, Noah, Matt, all these guys, Rhett, we're all going to be such heavy presences here on the Old Man Squad YouTube channel. And so I would ask everybody to please like, rate, and subscribe as we settle in for today's program. You can find Erik on the socials at Rotomancer, Rotomancer. You can find his written content over at Last Word on Sports as well. And you were telling me before we went on, I was like, I don't really care what direction we go on today's show. We'll cover some trades. You were saying that you feel like the Phoenix Suns are turning themselves into a little bit of a fantasy gold mine. So I'm just going to kind of turn the buffet line over to you now and ask, I mean, what do you mean by that? Let's talk about Phoenix.
All right. First of all, they got the ball rolling with the Kevin Durant trade, and I think that the failed 24-25 season wherein they put together Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and it was a horrendous failure. And the management said, "Okay, it didn't work. We're going to reset. Let's get rid of KD." And you've already talked about that trade on your show. And I think I'm liking the direction that the team is headed. They're doing this very aggressively, and we all saw that on draft night. And we're gonna get to that shortly. It's just that I think that the team overall is in a great space right now as far as finding new talent, finding new direction, and they just need to offload maybe Bradley Beal, and they're looking to me like there's some potential names on that team that are going to be interesting, especially to a guy like me who plays in a lot of deep leagues, 16 teamers, 18 teamers, etc. I know you don't play, you don't go that deep as
No,
far
not
as
often. No.
league sizes go. So I you can imagine how excited I am to talk about even the rookie, for example. They just drafted Kaman Maluak. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You're
Uh,
I'm
so
not the guy to
but
correct you on rookies.
if you're looking at the Suns and post KD trade, you're gonna go, who is their front court? It was looking like an amorphous mess, but slowly but surely, the team made some major moves. They traded for Mark Williams. They drafted Maluak. Okay, wow. Suddenly you have solid big men, both still relatively young, and you can see that they're headed to a rebuild probably around Devin Booker. I think based on what I've been reading, he's been involved in like the coaching search, etc. And it seems to me that they're planning to build it around Booker. So we can pretty much sharpie in Booker, sorry,
You
as
can
the
call him
core
Bookie.
guy. Yeah, sure. Devin Booker as their core guy moving forward. And all we really need to wait for right now is for them to offload Bradley Beal. It's just that obviously because of his oversized contract, it's going to be hard to find a trade partner right away. But from what I'm reading, even a buyout is not out of the question at this point. So
Hmm.
the team is looking for a much cleaner slate, and that's what they've achieved. They've got, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and a name I want to throw out there for the deep leaguers is Ryan Dunn.
Hmm.
Ryan Dunn is somebody who I think I streamed last season very briefly, maybe for like a couple of games when he was, starting towards the end of the season. He had a couple of okay games. Now, for those of you who are playing in shallower leagues and don't know much about Ryan Dunn, he's a forward who can stretch the floor and is capable of contributing maybe a steal or block. He's like a 3 and D kind of forward, but his shooting has yet to improve, but the basics and are there as far as him being able to defend multiple positions, etc. And he's going to be an intriguing guy to watch this season. Maybe not yet in 12 teamers, but again, I think it's still early. The Suns have a lot more moves to make, and it's going to be exciting, and they're going to be a must watch team over this offseason. And value is there for the taking as far as I'm concerned.
Bet Online, friends, continues to be your number one source for all sports betting action. You can cruise on over there right now. They've got live in-game betting while we're recording this on tennis. That'll be over probably by the time you guys are watching this show, but I can see it happening right now. You got baseball in full swing, football right around the corner. So you got NFL futures popping up. UFC, we've talked about. Soccer, we've talked about. I just mentioned tennis. It's all out there with the latest odds, news, scores, and even live in-game betting. That's where you really can let it fly. In between games, head down to the Bet Online casino with all the top Vegas-style action, including poker, a live casino, blackjack, a bunch of games that I don't know what they are, but you might, and more. Head to the website today. Take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program, level up bonuses, and weekly cash boosts. Bet Online. The game starts here. So a little more on Phoenix. I was talking to Adam King about this earlier in the week and how Charlotte really just sort of got off of Mark Williams. They tried to trade him during this last season. The Lakers said, not so fast, trying to sneak some messy mess on this guy through. And Phoenix said, we don't care. Like, we understand that he might be a car that could break down at any minute, but they're in. So if you're looking now back, and I'll pivot you more into the 12-teamers for a minute, how much of a risk are you willing to take on someone like Mark Williams, who has infinite fantasy potential? His fantasy game is extremely robust, but now, like, we know that his body isn't quite right, and Charlotte just like trying to get rid of this young dude. That's not like he's an old veteran that they're trying to unload. So you got Mark Williams there. You've got Jalen Green. You've got Dylan Brooks. You got Booker. Still Beal floating around. Do some of these guys besides Booker make your radar for a 12-teamer?
Well, obviously, Mark Williams is the biggest name out of those you've thrown out. And let's give your viewers and listeners some value add from somebody who's been watching the box scores in the NBA for far longer than some of them have been alive.
I was about
All
to say.
So, here we go. Let me sell you this pen on Mark Williams and
Okay.
why I am bullish. So, on the surface, Mark Williams is the only center that the Hornets had. So, upside, et cetera, et cetera. But his body is, uh, not great. So much so that the Lakers rescinded a trade, and a lot of question marks. He's been a disappointment. I mean, he could literally be renamed question mark Williams in fantasy basketball. In fantasy basketball. But wait, he's on a different team. And if there's one team I would trust with an injury prone player, it would be the Phoenix Suns. And if you're going to dig back, and I'm going to tap into you here, Dan, because I know you've been playing the game pretty much as long as I have.
Come on, say
I'm
Grant
gonna throw-
Hill.
Exactly.
Yep.
Grant Hill. the Phoenix Suns transformed Grant Hill's real life career and his fantasy, outlook. He did a complete 180. I'll throw another more obscure name out there, Channing Frye. Channing Frye, it was exactly for those who don't know, he was one of the I guess semi OG stretch fives from
Yeah.
back in the day that you'll have to look up on Wikipedia, etc. But Channing Frye is somebody who was really broken down. He was really injury prone. He was pretty much an afterthought in fantasy basketball. Then suddenly he's on the Suns. Their their medical staff, their training staff. There's something magical about the Suns that when an injury prone guy lands on that team, they somehow stay healthier. Even Chris Paul, etc. Look at Kevin Durant. He's been playing okay number of games while he was on the Suns. I mean, failure of the championship aspirations aside, he's been okay. And that's why I really like the Suns when it comes to quote unquote injury prone guys like Mark Williams. So if we're talking about Williams being somebody with a top 30, 40 ceiling, um, maybe even more, I think that his ceiling is still not as clear as it should be, considering how many games he's missed. We're going
Right.
to get a clearer picture this coming season. And I am willing to bet online that,
Hey, I like it. Well played.
willing to bet online that Williams would probably play anywhere between 65 to 70 games.
And
And
that's
that's
probably
asking a
enough.
lot.
He so this past season, it took him a little while to kind of get his legs underneath him. He ended up playing 44 games and he finished as the number 40 player in 9 category leagues. But it's worth noting that over his last 30 games, so if you kind of wipe out the minute ramp up 2 to 3 weeks, he averaged 29 minutes a game and he was number 28 on averages of 16 and 11, 2.2 defensive stats. 60 and 82 were the field goal free throw split. So he's the rare big man that can block shots, rebound, and is a decent enough foul shooter. It's a rare combination. So the fantasy stuff is extraordinary, and he's just going to have to stay on his feet. You would assume, Eric, that he pretty much takes the job away from any other center in Phoenix. They had Mason Plumlee, they had Nick Richards, they had Bol roll for stretches last year. But let me ask you about the flip side of this. And I have to admit, I don't actually know that there's a clear answer yet, but who's left in Charlotte? Yusuf Nurkic? He's
Yeah,
not the only one
he's
I know, but
toast.
he's like Charlotte just I know that they have young-ish players. I don't know that any of them is like a guy that they were hoping to build around at the big man spot. They've unloaded 3 decent centers over the last calendar year now, and it's left them with Musa Diabate, I think, as basically the only one on the roster that played a decent number of center minutes last year. Could they really go into next season with Diabate as the center?
Well, wait, there's more because draft night just happened and they
Right.
picked
Yeah,
up
Rooks too.
they have an interesting rookie and while and Ryan Kalkbrenner, I believe is his name. He was somebody that, wasn't as high as probably Maluak or Sorber as far as rookie name big men go, but considering the void that the Hornets have at the center position, he is a rookie who could come up with an instant impact from day one. It's all about training camp, maybe summer league, and preseason, where he's going to be somebody to watch. I'm not sure if he's going to crack the 25-minute mark in his rookie season, but considering he's competing against Musa Diabate, there's all he needs
Yeah.
to do is just not mess up. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
And he is a rookie who has, he's a 7-footer, able to block shots and fill the paint. And at this point, I'm sure the Hornets would be happy for him to check those boxes and move on from there. So
Man
he's
alive.
somebody I would look at, especially in my 16 teamers. I'd throw a last pick flyer on him if I wanted a boost in blocks. As things stand, of course, the off season is way early, and there's a lot of teams are in for a lot of moves. We still are waiting for the Giannis Antetokounmpo shoe to drop. There's still a question mark on what's in it for the Bucks. And for all we know, the Bucks are going to shape out to become a fantasy gold mine like the way the Suns are at this point.
Let's go to the next trade that I haven't talked about yet on this show, and that is Kristaps Porzingis, who's now a member of the Atlanta Hawks. I know you put out a tweet in there basically burying poor Onyeka Okongwu. I put out kind of a silly iteration of it myself. This is, I don't know, it's weirdly flying under the radar, I guess, because Porzingis is not viewed as a star level player anymore. He's still a very, very, very good basketball player, if, you know, a guy who, again, the body doesn't always really do what he wants it to. But this is a trade where Porzingis went to the Hawks with a second rounder for Terrence Mann and George Niang, if I'm remembering that right here. You know what? I can throw this on the screen and that'll solve
Yeah,
this
sure. Go
question for
ahead.
us. There
And
we go. Okay, there's from Shams. So there you go. Porzingis and a second rounder to the Hawks, Terrence Mann and Atlanta's first rounder to the Nets, George Niang and a second rounder to the Celtics. I mean, Boston straight up gave Kristaps Porzingis away, which tells you how they feel about the salary cap and also a little bit about how they feel about Kristaps Porzingis. Let's start on the Atlanta side of this. By the way, we're going to jump over the Brooklyn side because I don't want anything to do with the Brooklyn Nets. Atlanta brings in a dude who's what is Kristaps, like 7'2", something like that.
yeah, yeah.
After they had finally uncorked Onyeka Okongwu this last year, they finally sent Clint Capella to, I don't know,
No man's land.
basketball purgatory. What does this mean for Atlanta? Because I've seen some tweets, maybe they're hopeful, maybe they're factual, that they might potentially play Porzingis and Okongwu together, given the fact that Kristaps can space the floor, so they're not completely redundant. But what do you think happens with the Hawks? I mean, no matter how you slice it, this isn't a good thing for Okongwu.
Yeah, that's true. I have this little note app in my note app. I have a list of players who I think are gonna, have a lot of potential. Okongwu was on that list initially. After this trade, I had to cross him out. I
Hmm.
was excited. Now, way not as much. Uh, I mean, injury history aside, Porzingis is a solid real life player and an even better fantasy player because he has great shooting percentages. He can shoot threes, block shots, etc. In some ways, you can match his what he brings to the table to Jaren Jackson Jr. In that sense. He even rebounds the ball better, but he
Yeah.
doesn't get as many steals as Jackson. So I think that he will thrive alongside Trey Young if they're still keeping Trey Young. And I think Trey Young's going to stay because of the acquisition of Porzingis. It makes Atlanta a very interesting threat in the East, considering how decimated the East is at the moment with
Yeah.
players like Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton going down with torn Achilles and won't be playing this coming season. So the Hawks are going to be in the thick of things as far as I'm concerned. But obviously the spotlight's going to be on teams like the Orlando Magic who've really loaded up. But to your point about Okongwu, uh, the the whole issue here with Porzingis has been his health, and it's his history of injuries is a concern, and that's why a lot of people tend to be able to draft him at a discount. He almost always surpasses his ADP as far as per game production is concerned,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. And he's going to be sharing the front court most of the time with Jalen Johnson, and he's also an injury prone forward, unfortunately, despite his breakout, and he hasn't been able to stay on the floor in a season for long enough for us to really justify taking him early. Uh, Maybe in Roto, I know you don't uh, mind these injuries as much because you can fill in those game slots. But for a guy like me who plays in leagues, deep ones that don't have IL slots, it's very punishing. And unfortunately, I think that's when we're going to see a Kongwu when either Porzingis or Johnson go down. Um, I'd be surprised if Okongwu is able to. I see him averaging maybe 25, 28 minutes because he's still very good, obviously, but he'll only crack the 30-minute mark consistently if one of these two guys go down with an injury, because Porzingis is somebody you'd want to play heavy and often, give him a ton of minutes, especially when you want to win these games. Um, and yeah, it's not a great spot for a Kongwu. He's gonna be falling down draft boards in fantasy for sure. So now Porzingis is somebody, as we all know, is able to give you top 20-ish, top 30 value as a floor probably on a per game basis, but the missed games are an issue. But he is somebody you can get outside the top 30, outside the top 35, depending on how the market is feeling on Porzingis. So yeah, similar to Mark Williams, these are centers who I am looking at to be able to grab at a discount. If they fall to me, I'll take them. I mean, at some point, if they fall far enough, we're gonna take them. So I like. I don't mind the situation, because if you look at where he was in the Boston Celtics system, it was all Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown.
Yeah.
And even Derek White sometimes stole his thunder in certain games. But when you're playing with a really talented pass first, or a talented playmaking point guard in Trae Young, it changes the dynamic. We're gonna see, like, uh I'm harking back to those games when Trae Young was, throwing those lobs to John Collins when John Collins was back with the Hawks. You're going to see some nice alley oops with Porzingis. He has that length. He still has a bit of that speed in those wonky knees, but he's going to get some stats that are going to be valuable in fantasy basketball. Again, it's about those games played, and we cannot predict, obviously, games played, and that's somebody I'm going to be hoping will fall to me, my by around 10 spots come
Yeah,
draft
I'm
day.
looking at the sort of the usage breakdown. Jason Tatum, 20 shots a game, 6 assists, 6 free throws. Jalen Brown, 18 shots a game, 5 free throws, 4.5 assists. Then Porzingis was at 13.7 over in Atlanta. Trae Young, he'll most likely still be the number one guy, but even then, 18 shots, those 12 assists, like those go to somebody else. Jalen Johnson was the number 2 guy on Atlanta this last year at 15. Even if you slotted in, even if you said Porzingis was the third option behind those two guys, you're still talking about 33 shots getting up and guys that are willing to pass a bit more, as opposed to, what did I just say, 38 between Tatum and Brown, guys that are a bit more shoot first. So I certainly hear where you're coming from. And in the Games Cap Roto universe, that's a pathway that you look at. I'm also inclined, as you're talking it through, like, if Okongwu is going to get a bunch of starts on games that Porzingis misses, or games that Jalen Johnson misses, or even just like they're going to carve out enough of a spot for him behind both of those guys that he can get in that 25, 26, 27-minute range, it does feel like Okongwu will still have serviceable 9 cat value, just maybe not, because he went on like a top 25 run to end this last year. So there's some sort of now lower price that's going to have to make sense for him. But Eric, now here's the tough question here. And heaven help us, we might run out of time after just doing these couple of trades. What's the deal with the Celtics? Like, Al Horford's a free agent, so maybe they bring him back, maybe they don't. But like right now, the starting center for the Celtics is Luke Kornet. As of this day, that'll probably will change before opening night. But like, what do you think the
Maybe.
Celtics are going to do? Maybe, yeah, maybe not. Are you looking to see if Luke Kornet's the guy?
um he might be the guy, and he will
Sort of a
definitely
lost year
be the
for them.
guy. he's going to be the guy I'm going to look at in my deep leagues. He, okay, Al Horford played far too many games, far too many minutes because of Kristaps Porzingis' inability to play as many games as he should, and Big Al can only do that for so many more, seasons, because he's really on the wrong side of 30, and he, load management is going to be part of it. So the Celtics will have to lean on Kornet at some point. Uh, as far as I know, the Celtics still believe that their future is tied to the four players of Tatum, Brown, Derek White, and now Peyton Pritchard. So we're gonna see guys like White and Pritchard pop. These these guys gonna have to step up, cover a lot of the scoring void that's left by Tatum's absence. Uh, I'm not high on Cornet as far as 12 team leagues go, because he's he was a streamer at some point, but can he deliver consistently? I That's a question mark. And like you said, it's still early. They're gonna be making some more moves, but I don't think they're letting go of Brown at this point. I think those Brown trade rumors have been quashed at this point, so it's safe to say that we're gonna see a core of those four names that I mentioned. And as much as I'd like to consider Big Al Horford as a core, he's just too old and um, too much wear and tear on that body for me to count on him. I had him in one league last season, and yeah, the load management was a bit of a headache, especially in head to head, when I couldn't, have a 4 game week. All those 4 game weeks that I was supposed to have with a Celtic player, I effectively just had 3 when I was running Horford. So
Yeah, it's a
he is
huge
not
pain.
somebody. Yeah, exactly.
By the way, just a footnote, Luke Kornet also a free agent. I mucked that up here a second ago, but it sounds like the Celtics are attempting to re-sign both Kornet and Horford. They're hoping that they can make those
Yeah.
guys the front court. And like you just said, Horford not going to play every game. And this is sort of I mean, they're not alone in this regard, but like the Celtics, the Pacers, a couple of teams are looking down this kind of, do we just do the David Robinson thing and tank a year? We're missing our best player. Let's just throw a year, see if we can fall into a great draft pick, a la Tim Duncan. And then, we go back to being top of the heap. Boston, of course, has to unload a bunch of contracts to do it because they're paying a ton to then not be a championship caliber team without Tatum. I'm very curious to see what they actually try to do with the guys that are left. I mean, they're still going to be good, but
Well, okay.
sending off
So
pieces right now.
yeah, we're unpacking the Celtics. We have to now step into this other last trade that they did, the holiday trade where they got Anthony Simons,
Yeah.
and Simons is going to be somebody who I would consider as a okay fantasy asset as far as points and threes are concerned, but he's not going to contribute on defense. He's not going to provide steals. His shooting accuracy will have to significantly improve for his fantasy value in category scoring leagues to really pop. But he is somebody I would look at for 3.5 threes, maybe 20 something points. So a bulk of the scoring left behind by Tatum's absence will be. I mean, we're basically, what Boston did here is they swapped out a defensive guard in Holiday and picked up an almost opposite guy and who's pure offense in Simons. So there's going to be a shift, obviously, defensive wise. But we're going to see Derek White have to do a lot more work on that, perimeter, point of attack type of defense. So Derek White is a guy that I'll be targeting aggressively in drafts. But Simons is somebody, you know, eh, I'd still prefer to take. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
hard to get excited about a guy who
Mm-hmm.
who just gives you points and threes. So you definitely have to consider him outside of the top 75 for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So not too excited, but uh, I think that's something that a lot of our listeners and viewers here will be interested to listen to once uh, pre-fantasy draft season rolls along. These are the type of names that you can look at if you're trying to round out your team. And points is something that's harder to find later in drafts. Now, Simons is somebody who's obviously going to fall because of his deficiencies on defense, but he is going to be a scorer. He's probably going to give you, like I said, 20 plus points per game and almost 3.5 threes, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think he averaged close to that last season. He's been a consistent 3-point shooter. So he is somebody to look at for specific needs that he falls into that bucket. Probably is if we're following your language of bucket. So he's that round out your team bucket kind of guy.
I
And
do
we're
like
probably gonna touch on that or touch on him again in further episodes, maybe on your show or on mine once that gets rolling out.
If this board that I've used behind my head for the last few years ever falls apart, I'm just going to have a board that has a bunch of little buckets hanging on it. And I'll start putting stickers of player names in those, and that'll be my new backdrop. But hopefully this thing will last a while longer because it's been a godsend. Before I let you go, E, what about the other side of that same trade? Since we just talked about the Celtics, the Blazers gave up Simons and draft capital to get Jrue Holiday, a player that they had briefly in the aftermath of the Damian Lillard trade, but then sent to Boston. Now he's back, but this time it kind of feels like they want him, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay. From a third party observer's point of view, I cannot understand the Blazers as an organization in real life. Uh, they're pretty young with guys like Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, Kamara, all of these guys. And then suddenly you trade for an aging Jrue Holiday who would be best suited on a contending team. But the thing is, I can understand that they're trying to become a good defensive team, and you have a great defensive center in Donovan Clingan, but you have to offload somebody like DeAndre Ayton first. And here is a team that has. And speaking of teams that confuse me, and since we did mention draft night, the Blazers were getting a lot of flack on X and social media for their surprise. They were the biggest surprise pick. They drafted Hansen Yang Hansen, depending on the Chinese um, name sequencing you want to use.
Yeah, we pretty much do what we want over here in the States. So,
the thing is, he's another big man out of China who's very talented as far as, he was the darling of the draft combine for those who weren't following the NBA draft, but he was way too early as far as the consensus goes. And this is, he's a 7-footer who was picked up by a team that already has DeAndre Ayton, who is a question mark, who's like a points rebounds guy, but then you've got this promising young player in Donovan Clingan who is challenged offensively speaking, but is a great rebounder and shot blocker in the making. I mean, Donovan Clingan in his rookie season was it was a top 10 shot blocking center or player for that matter in the NBA by totals. In case people didn't know that, and that was at some point still playing behind DeAndre Ayton. I mean, if the Blazers decide to move on from Ayton, and that's a shoe that I'm hoping will drop at some point in the offseason, and
seems like
they
want
fully
to.
commit. Yeah, exactly. Fully commit to Klingon. He is going to be a blocks machine. Maybe not on the level of, say, a Walker Kessler of the Jazz, but he is somebody who can be a block specialist that will take a team in head-to-head formats over the top as far as winning blocks category week in and week out is concerned.
He's a
So
big
keep an
dude
eye.
too. Donovan Clingan, 7'2", 280. Like, people need to realize he is a
Exactly.
mountain of a man. And the only reason we didn't talk more about how giant he was is that Zach Edey is 7'3" or 7'4". So he was like the second biggest guy to come out of the draft last year. There's just big dudes in that one. But I like to your, contractually, like I keep looking at this trade and trying to figure out, is Portland, like, do they have something else lined up? But Jrue Holiday has 3 years left on his deal, and this is an expiring now that they sent out for him. So, like, if you're thinking salary dump, no, Boston was on the salary dump side of this one. I actually think Jrue Holiday might play a lot for Portland this year. And I know he's older and all that stuff, but like he's been effectively like a fifth option on a team for the last couple of years, and we haven't seen him have to go do anything in a bit. He could be kind of that calming veteran presence to help get the Blazers to another rung of growth, which we did kind of see out of them last year. And I can't believe that I'm like, this is an old man squad show, so maybe I shouldn't be that surprised by myself, but I was pretty much out on Jrue Holiday after watching the way he looked this last year. This might wake him up a little bit. I might be back in on him.
All right. How much in are you? Because
Yeah, that's a great question.
As far as, and we'll probably find the right bucket for Holiday at some point
I need my
moving
buckets
forward. But
like, think about this. Last year, he was 107 was his rank, and he effectively just like stood on the court for 30 minutes a game. He was almost asked to do nothing. He took 9 shots in 31 minutes a night. I know that Portland has other guys that they want to get shots to, but they literally just traded away their highest shot taking guy from last year in this deal. So yeah, Shaedon Sharp's going to get his shots up, and thinking DeAndre Ayton is going to get his looks when he's out there. But I think like internally they've moved on from DeAndre Ayton. So you might see a Jrue Holiday that's just a little bit more engaged, and his game is pretty fantasy friendly if you just sort of like scroll back year over year over year. The prior season with Boston, he took 10 shots instead of 9, and he was a top 75 guy. So it doesn't take that much to get him into that kind of 7th round range where I might start to take a look at him, because I think he's going to be an afterthought in drafts after a really quiet, super boring, like he was the definition of a boring fantasy season this last year. And I'm getting all jazzed up about a possible Jrue Holiday, like when Chris Paul went to Oklahoma City and it woke him back up a little bit again. I can't help but wonder if there's going to be like a Jrue, you go ahead and you lead this young team type of year. And I'm weirdly into it right now. And I don't know if you can talk me out of it until after free agency.
Actually, I think you're on the right track, and I think I'm on board with you specifically because of where he fit, because of the range in where he finished last season, which is outside of the top 100. And this is the point in a lot of fantasy drafts that a lot of fantasy managers are going to be rolling the dice on a lot of rookies, and because Holiday is obviously very old at this point, relatively speaking, but he can still deliver fantasy value. And if I get him outside of the top 100, which was almost going to be a certainty, he's going to fall. And if he falls to my lap, I'm going to be pretty happy to just catch him, at the round that I think that he's going to give
one
me.
of us, one of us, one
Yeah,
of
okay.
us.
Yes, I am leaning more on younger players than you as far as tendencies go. But like I said in my last episode where I guessed it, I actually drafted Chris Paul last season, and
He was great.
and the timing couldn't have been better. So I'm on a good streak, and I think my sentiment is Holiday could deliver some kind of
That's what I wanted to hear.
a bounce back season. But
Come on, baby.
again, as long as our and this is for everybody, as long as you temper your expectations. Right?
He's
So
not going to be a superstar or anything like that.
he's not going to be like the top 30 point guard he was at some point in his career.
Like, what if you got like a dozen points, 2 threes, 5 boards, 5 assists, a steal, little under a block on good percentages? That's like a nice 70 to 80 range kind of thing. And if you can get that sort of well-rounded player late in your draft, I didn't mean to turn this whole episode into the Jrue Holiday thing. He's also like generally considered one of the super good dudes of the NBA. And I like to have guys on my team that I'm like, I like rooting for that guy for my team. I like rooting for that guy because he's like a notoriously nice human being. It's all the things you look for when you're drafting the Werther's original old man special over here on my club. We're at the 40-minute mark. I gotta let you go. It's like first thing in the sun probably isn't even up yet for you at this point. First of all, or actually before I let you go, I mentioned at the beginning of the program, Last Word on Sports is where your written content is. What are you working on right now? What's about to drop over there?
Well, since we've already, hashed out some of it, I'm going to put it into writing. I'm going to write up an article on the Phoenix Suns doing a good job, and I'm going to highlight each player who I think is going to be, potential to pop. Obviously, Mark Williams is going to be there since we already discussed that. I think with the void that's happening based on injuries, Devin Booker is probably somebody I'm going to have to seriously consider as a first round target at this point with Halliburton and Tatum not in the mix. So maybe 11, 12 if I'm, feeling the Suns at this point and liking their direction, Devin Booker might just be that guy for me at the end of the round.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that came up with Alex Rickling on, like, you and I did the new top 10 episode a few weeks back, and that was before Halliburton went down. Now we need to do like a new top 10 because every time we talk, another player just has to click one slot further forward. I mean, this is an historic season coming up in the number of top 20 NBA players that are just not going to be there. But we have plenty of time to discuss that today. We are done. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Make sure to like, rate, and subscribe on your way out. He is Erik Ong, the legend himself, at Rotomancer on social media. Find his stuff over at Last Word on Sports. I am Dan Besbris. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you guys soon.